The undertone, especially as a Black woman leading an organization, is this constant sense of you're not good enough. You have to prove yourself always, and you have to show up in a particular way to demonstrate your worthiness. That's on top of just doing the work.
Welcome to Natural Collisions, brought to you by Co.act Detroit. Conversations about the challenges and opportunities in the nonprofit sector, highlighting the voices in nonprofit work in Detroit and Southeast Michigan, and beyond. I'm your host, Sharnae Sanders, Program Manager at Co.act Detroit. In today's Natural Collisions conversation, we are talking wellness, rest, and liberation. This episode will serve as part 1 of our Fun Well series, a series of episodes focused on the importance of funding well-being for nonprofit leaders and teams. The colliders for this conversation all work intentionally to make the nonprofit workplace a healthier and happier environment. Our guests understand that the only way to initiate this change is by being honest about where we are right now. And this conversation gets very honest, so be sure to listen to the very end. Our guests this month are Kim Johnson.
Good morning. My name is Kim Johnson. I am the founder, president, and CEO of Developing Kids. We are a community-based organization that focuses on serving young people from ages 5 to 24. And in addition to serving those young people, we also serve their families, and we also provide services to the community.
Heidi Alcock.
Morning, everyone. I'm Heidi Alcock. I am the Director of Grant Development and Communications for the McGregor Fund. We are a private foundation. We're about 100 years old, based in the city of Detroit. And our grant making focuses on ending poverty and homelessness and chronic disconnection from employment and income opportunities.
Shamil Dobbs.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Shamil Dobbs, and I have the pleasure of serving as the CEO for Michigan Community Resources. And we are a 25-year-old nonprofit intermediary providing a host of services, capacity building services, legal services to nonprofit organizations in and around Southeast Michigan. And it is our pleasure to do so. We are able to walk alongside not only nonprofit organizations, but the leaders that serve those organizations and the incredible community-based work that they do.
And me, Sharnae Sanders. I'm excited to be a part of this conversation because of the work around the Nonprofit Wellbeing series I lead at Co.act.
My name is Sharnae Sanders. My position is the Program Manager at Co.act Detroit. And at Co.act, we are a hub that accelerates transformative impact and really support our nonprofit community by being able to support through collaborative idea generation, cross-sector resources, and equitable access to world-class programming and learning opportunities.
Let's jump right in. This conversation is centered around wellness, rest, and liberation. And on Natural Collisions, we love to start with the simple context. What does wellness, rest, and liberation mean to each of our guests? Personally, within their various organizations, and for the nonprofit sector as a whole. I asked our guests to respond.
I have worked and labored in this field a long time and felt that I didn't have an opportunity to rest, but I also felt that I couldn't take an opportunity to rest. So when you are responsible, and I just shared and had some conversations about this on Friday with some other executive directors, it's hard to rest when you know that you're responsible for how people are going to live and eat. That is a heavy weight that sits on you constantly. So when you want to sit down and relax, but then a grant comes through and it's like, yes, you have 7 days to get this through. You may want to relax, and I may have been headed on a trip, but now I'm on the airplane and I have to get this done. And it's not possible, because I know that if I don't get this done, who could possibly lose their job? Or I may have to lay someone off because I don't have the funding. And rest for me is being able to actually unwind and disconnect from a cell phone, totally disconnect from email, not have to worry about if I'm missing a phone call. And unfortunately, in the sector, I don't think we really have an opportunity to do that. For wellness, to me, feels that I actually don't cancel my doctor's appointments. I don't cancel a massage. I don't sit and look at it, and say, I really want to make this appointment for this massage, but I can't. And I know because I have meetings that start at 8 o'clock, and I know I have meetings that go until 8 o'clock at night. So from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I may have a block of time in the middle of the day, but can I really walk away to go get a massage during that block of time? No, that I may feel too guilty to do that. So it's that rest is feeling like it's okay and being validated and reminded that it's okay and that I deserve it.
Kim, that is resonant, and I appreciate you saying that is my expertise. But I would sort of reframe that and offer that myself, partners like Co.act, CDAD, New, M&A, the organizations that came together to help us conceptualize the Rest and Liberation Initiative, the report, the body of research. In part, it was a reflection of the experiences that you just shared, right? I mean, part of what we aim to do is sort of be resonant, but also responsive to what we know to be true and all of the things that you lifted up. But I wanna first take a moment to reflect on what Charnay said. What does rest mean for me? I think what rest means for me in the context of being a nonprofit professional, in the context of being a mother, a wife, a Black woman in this sector, it's the opportunity to be able to breathe and center myself in this world and in this work in a way that oftentimes, like you mentioned, Kim, is not always possible because we carry so many things. And the responsibility in particular for nonprofit leadership, as you mentioned, it's this ongoing physical burden, but it's this emotional burden, like you said, of knowing that there are so many others that are reliant on our energies and the things that we have to do to sustain the work. And it's not, it's not a 5 o'clock comes and you can kind of cut that off, right? It's something that you carry and it's something that sits with you. So I think for me, rest for sure is being able to disconnect from that and finding opportunities in space where I can remember exactly who I am, what I enjoy doing, and centering peace and joy. For my organization, I think what we aim to do, and we do it in bits and starts, is create a space and place where individuals remember their own humanity in this work, and that we remember that organizations are powered by the very people who work there, and ensuring that we're creating a culture that is responsive to that. And most certainly, we want to ensure that our mission is paramount, but so are our people. And that's something that we have to hold and carry every single day.
So this first question is really important, Charnay. Thanks for asking it. So for me personally, wellness is creating space amidst the myriad of stresses and responsibilities of leadership in the sector to really know what is going on with myself. To have the space to know that I'm not physically well and need to seek some kind of strategy. To know that I need to be in nature or go to yoga. To have the space to know what I need and then to give myself permission to meet those needs. And I would just say, I guess in my sense, because I'm not an executive director of an organization, when I think about like my team, the team is the social sector. I'm here to be of service to the social sector. And so when I think about what does wellness mean for the sector, it means valuing the practice of people taking the time to know themselves, to meet their needs, because I really believe we cannot create peace and we cannot create justice in this world, which is what we're all here to do, if we cannot do that for ourselves first. So it's like rings. First, I have to take care of my needs. I have to make sure I honor the people who are immediately around me to take care of their needs. And then I need to help create structures in the social sector, in the funding community, to know that that is a practice that we collectively value and will pay for if there's costs associated. It's not just about the money. To me, it's more about culture and value and norms. But, to the extent that there are costs associated with that, then this is for me on the funding side, we should be paying for that because we can't get to the mission. We can't achieve the missions that we're all here to achieve if we are beating ourselves up.
I completely agree with what everyone already mentioned. I feel like there's a thread of like this spaciousness, because that kept coming up, and like just this thread of presence between everything that we're mentioning. And I agree. I feel like rest, liberation, and wellness is all so deeply interconnected. And for me, like it feels like having the space to breathe, the space to be present with myself, like to be able to check in on how I'm feeling, the space to show up as my best self, and recognizing sometimes my best is not 100% each day, and that's okay. But to also recognize that I'm in a community within an organization, a team that also, like you mentioned, Shamil, centers my humanity, centers my well-being, where I'm still able to show up and still be okay, even if that looks like me showing up today at 70%, because I know I have other team members that can support me and be there. So I think it's also this thread of community care and of understanding and having like the empathy and just the space for you to show up and feel like you don't always have to perform or be a robot at any second, where you're robbed from your humanity because of the length of your to-do list or everything that you have to get done. I think it's definitely just having this spaciousness and like more like this, also moving at this pace of grace that is like welcome for our community, for our team, and for leaders to be able to show up for themselves and for their team, but to also step back when they need to. So I'm really appreciating this. And I think this is just so more evident on why it's important and why we need this within our community, because we recognize that we work in a sector that is plagued with burnout and exhaustion, and it's nothing new, but I feel like there's so many more opportunities now to be creative, to be innovative with the ways that we're approaching how we care for our well-being and really moving forward in that, especially after going through this pandemic and learning so much from 2020 alone. I feel like there's just so much space for us to really put more of this intention and this energy and momentum that has been building up over time into action. So I'm really kind of curious, and maybe this plays off of the next question, but are there like any stories from your past experience within the nonprofit sector, or just in general in our community, where there was just so much overextension and burnout? And what were your direct lifelines or solutions? Like, were there mental health days that you were able to kind of take advantage of, or what was able to really kind of support you in moving forward through those challenging times?
And I wanted us to go deeper into that question. What have been some of the stories our guests have experienced or seen of overextension and burnout? Have direct lifelines or solutions been made available in the past? And how has the well-being of nonprofit leaders and staff been supported previously?
Kim, I see you look like you want to jump in, and I want to give you space to do so. But there's one thing that you said, Sade, that I would be remiss if I didn't respond to. I think it's hard to have this conversation without sort of grounding the reality of nonprofit leadership in the fact that so much of what we do is performative. You have to perform and produce to garner and earn, right? That is the nature of the role. You have to have, whether it's the widget, whether it's the program, whatever it is, you're doing a thing. You have to demonstrate that that thing is actually viable and valuable to get the resources to continue to do the thing. And so much of our leadership is entrenched in how well we can tell the story of the performance, not actually the quality of the performance, not actually the quality of the work that we're doing, but how well we can tell that story and rise up and perform. And that act in and of itself is exhaustive. And it creates, like you said, this sort of culture of burnout. But I don't want to take up too much space, Kim. I saw you. We're ready to jump on in, and I would love to hear what you have to say.
No, I was thinking, Shamil, you hit a lot of things right on the nose. Please go ahead. When you speak about just performative, everything can't be, quantitative to show the impact of the work. And that has been so frustrating over time, because I can tell you stories and stories of how folks are doing work in organizations, but that performative piece of not being able to put it to a number, that's exhausting. And it really hits hard there are sometimes organizations who can put those numbers that way, and it becomes discouraging to the folks who can't do that. So they back away from the work. But I also want to go back to touch on some things. Shamil, you mentioned humanity, Shanae. And you talked about it too. And it's about how the people in the organization's powered by the people who work there. Again, as executive director, you have to empower and encourage. You have to try to get everyone to perform, to meet those numbers, to meet those things for grants, and it's constant in order to be able to fund the work. And at the same time, I think relationships are so important. They are really a basis of how we do things. And in an organization, I've had people come in and feel like, I can't talk to this person or I can't talk to that person, and this is all about work. And when you come in with that mindset, you stand out because no, we're getting all in. What's your kid's name? What's your husband's name? Because it's to make you feel like, and we want you to know that we care about you, not just about the work that you're doing, but essentially we care about you as a person. And it's not normal, which is disturbing, and that people feel like that's a problem, or they've never had that experience where someone actually cared about them, particularly in the well-being of their family, because they're expected to just come and perform and go home, come and perform and go home. And for rest and liberation for the team, my team, I think is just being able to do the work and being provided opportunities to learn and grow, make their mistakes, learn from mistakes, but feel that they're supported all through the process. I'll tell you, before I even knew about the Eugene Miller Fellowship, in the policies and procedures for developing kids, and we're 17 years old, and this had to be maybe around year 3 or 4, I created our handbook, and it said that if you worked for 10 years for developing kids, you would get a 1-month sabbatical. I have a team member who's been with us for going on 14 years. And I remember when she hit that mark. Now, I never took it. It wasn't even a thought for me to take it. But when she hit that mark, she took a week off, and we were just so busy. She couldn't get the time to take the other months. I kept saying, we'll figure it out. And she said, no, because this will fall and that'll fall. And she never did it. And so I just paid her. I was like, I'm just going to give you that, what you would have, salary. That's what I'm going to do, because I appreciate that she stayed there. But I also recently told her, I said, you're 15 years coming. Like, no, we're going to do that again and do it right. And so that's important too, that folks just outside of me feel like they deserve rest as well, and they deserve to just to be themselves and to feel that they're not a robot. So I'm sorry, I might have gotten all off there first, that other question, but
yeah, and I'm sorry, I do want to piggyback a little bit off of some themes that I'm hearing, and I want to name some things. I think social sector leaders absolutely have it the worst of any sector in our society. I'm going to tell you why. I think that social sector leaders have to be multicultural, but in a way, and I'm talking about org culture, in a way that is in itself exhausting, right? You have to speak a certain kind of speak with the foundations, a different kind of speak with your donors, a different kind of speak with corporations. Then you've got, for those who have public, there's a whole different world when you're getting public sector money, right? And then if you speak like that when you're in community, it doesn't work. So you have to have this whole other practice, this whole other language. And every single audience expects you to meet them where they're at. But I'll tell you what, we're not paying people in the social sector to be that multilingual, multicultural. We're not, right? And how do you ever recover? How do you even recover from having one conversation with one audience and then move into the next audience? It is exhausting. And so all of you have mentioned like the feeling of having to perform. Like I see that over and over again, and I see how excruciating it is. And I feel like it's not just that it's exhausting and hard to do and hard to maintain successfully, but the expectation that you have to be able to do it in order to succeed is ridiculous. And I just want to call that question. It also doesn't fully embrace the authenticity of each leader to be naturally who they are, in their natural power, in their natural flow. I think the issues and challenges faced by our community that the social sector is uniquely organized to help community work through, we should be focusing on that and the norms and cultural sort of practices that allow the social sector to flourish in that area. And those of us in the funding community and who are like funding that need to stop expecting that somehow like the way I think about metrics is more important than what you're doing on the ground, because it's not. So I think there's a level of respect, a level of surrender that I would really like to see public-private funders adopt. That says, I trust Kim, I trust Shamil, I trust Sharnae. I know that the way that you will do this and the right relationship that you build with integrity with your community is all that matters. I don't have to understand it. I have to trust you. That's the space we need to get to so that the whole sector can build the kind of cultures that are human and connected and focused on community and not focused on all the performative stuff that funders have put y'all through.
Wholeheartedly agree, Heidi. And I think that trust has to also translate to a shift in how organizations and nonprofits, especially BIPOC-led organizations, are funded. Because you also have to have spaciousness in terms of, and flexibility in terms of your funding. If you're not getting general operating support, if you're not getting investment in your talent, if you're not getting investment in your general infrastructure, but most of the dollars that you're coming in are to support your programs, it puts you in a constraint mindset around how to even create a culture of rest, how to create a culture where folks like the woman that you mentioned on your team, Kim, felt that she couldn't even take her full 4 weeks. She could only take 1 week because there's so much work that has to be done, and or there isn't someone who can slot in and fill those gaps in her absence. And as you were talking, Kim, the thing that came up for me, and I am the same way, is that so much of that culture that exists in the organizations is also a reflection of how we show up. If we're not taking time, if we're sitting at our desk and not taking lunch, and I am guilty of it, once I'm in, I'm in. I rarely get up to get some water, walk out the door, do anything. Imagine what tone that sets in an organization when you're the one who's also not taking time, not taking rest, not honoring the things that you need for yourself. Why in the world would any of our teammates feel like they could do the same, right? They're going to mirror some of the same behaviors. So to answer your question, Sharnae, and I am not the best at it, so let me just say that. Some of the things that we've been doing, and some of this is a credit to Co.act and the leadership with Alondra, is now we have Mental Health Fridays. And I was so grateful hearing that, Co.act was doing it. And it's one of those things that reverberates, right? When we do something innovative in the sector and someone hears about it, it creates an opportunity to mirror some of those shifts and changes. So now we have once a month, first Fridays of the month, our team has the ability to take off. And I'm going to take a step back. Even before now, this hybrid work culture where I think many of us are learning the rhythm of working from home and also being present in the workspace, there were times when we were supposed to come in every day. And during that moment in time, if you will, we tried to create a very flexible work culture where if things came up, and if someone called or sent an email or text, we allowed flexible hours. So there was never the expectation that you had to be in the office from 9 to 5. The reality is you can get your work done from most spaces, and the nature of so much of our work is being proximate in community anyway. I think the last thing that I'll share, and Sharnae, I think you asked for an example, and this is the most crystallized example that I can give, is that when I had my daughter, I probably should have stayed home, but I didn't. I was back in the office when she was 2 months, 3 months, but the sheer act of me bringing her into the office every single day set a whole different mindset around what it meant to be a mother, what it meant to, recognize that you still have the balance of family in an organization. I remember sitting on a panel, literally, with my daughter strapped to my chest, and everybody was just like, oh my God. It was like the wildest thing anyone had seen in a while. And for me, it was simply that, yeah, my daughter's with me. I take her everywhere I go, but it's the acts that we do in our leadership role. And when I say leadership, I don't just mean executive directing, but just as leaders in organizations, it's the simple acts that we do that say, you know what, our family is important, our bodies are important, our rest is important, that will incrementally shift the culture within our respective organizations.
It's sitting in my chest, so I have to say this. And I think it's a story a bit. Heidi, how you were just talking about being multilingual. I was just talking about that in a team meeting of how you have to be able to share with the parents in one way, with the funder, donors, going through all of that, and how trust is important. And, you know, we're in the midst of this capital campaign, so I'm meeting a lot of new donors, folks who I hadn't met before. And this past summer, I was so bothered. I met two women who both wanted to drop in and meet me face to face to decide if they were going to fund our work. And they didn't. But immediately within them coming in, within 10 minutes of the conversation, they asked me if I knew a gentleman who's doing work in a community, and I need to learn from him. And he's a white man who is so well connected to so many things. And so, but I was so disturbed because within 10 minutes of you coming in to see and hear what I was doing, you immediately told me that I needed to, did I know this person? Who I know, but it was, did I know him, and how I needed to connect and go see what he's doing and learn from it. And so when we get to, it goes back to, oh, is it because we don't have the marketing, you know, I don't want to get to descriptive, but it's going back to what are you looking for to show the impact of the work? And that becomes the tiring part, because that stayed on me for so long. And it was just, now I got to work harder to compete with a machine size organization person to be able to show the impact and the quality of my work. Like, for folks who I am trying to build new relationships with, this is what I have to be able to do. And at the end of the day, I won't say it's impossible, but how much will I work myself into the ground to get there? And it was just and you just said respect, that word came up. It was so disrespectful. And I know that I'm not alone in that sense, but it was just it's just exhausting. It's so exhausting.
No, thank you all for sharing. I feel like there's just so much being said in terms of like the expectations and like the competing and the performing, and it all really resonates. And I feel like, especially as someone, like as a program manager in my role, like being able to see how the leaders of our organization and like my colleagues kind of show up in the work when they give themselves the permission or us the space to be able to be human and to be able to kind of show up differently and just be okay with that. I think that speaks such a big tone, and it's like those small moments that can start to shift like culture. So I'm really kind of curious, and kind of, I guess, moving us forward in the conversation, if we could talk more about like the Rest Celebration Initiative, because I feel like it's moments like those that are not only calling for like those subtle shifts, like, hey, it doesn't have to happen overnight. Like, these are some tangible and tactical things you can do, but also getting people's attention by, hey, it's time to think differently about sabbatical programs and how to make them more accessible. So if we could take a step back, if Shamil, if you can kind of lead us into that conversation, and then Heidi, I would love to hear just really more about like the Miller Fellowship and how that's been able to pave ways for nonprofit leaders.
If you're interested in continuing the conversation around well-being, be sure to register for Co.act's Nonprofit Wellbeing Series. We're kicking off the first session of the year on Wednesday, March 27th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. via Zoom. We'll be welcoming Desiree Attaway and Jessica Fish of the Attaway Group to discuss time, power, and the workplace. We'll be exploring our relationships with time, productivity, and self-worth. If you're interested in attending or learning more, visit coactdetroit.org/events. From there, you can check out our events calendar for even more well-being programs and other offerings hosted by Co.act. I hope to see you at an event soon. Changing the status quo is intentional. Shamil Dobbs saw and felt the burnout prevalent within nonprofit leaders and staff, and will take the lead in collaborating with peers from other nonprofits to compile data and research to initiate a change. We asked Shamil what prompted her down this path. We also learned more from Heidi Alcock from the McGregor Fund about the Miller Fellowship and how it has been impactful in making sabbatical programs more accessible to nonprofit leaders. But first, we start with Shamil, who began with some sincere words for Kim.
Absolutely. And before jumping in, I just want to say, Kim, you are not alone. And that is most certainly the experiences of many of us. I've had similar experiences, some overt, some not so overt, but the undertone, especially as a Black woman leading an organization, is this constant sense of you're not good enough. You have to prove yourself always, and you have to show up in a particular way to demonstrate your worthiness. That's on top of just doing the work. And that sentiment alone is enough to burn anyone out. Forget the work. Just the sentiment of you're not worthy. You're not enough. You have to jump through hurdles, through burning fire just to demonstrate that you can stand alongside other peers, right? So I just want to know that you were heard. And quite frankly, that was the impetus for the Rest and Liberation Initiative. So thank you, Shanae, for teeing it up. And Shanae, you know I'm going to pick on you as well because you were so instrumental in doing a lot of the research for RLI. So RLI stemmed honestly from a personal need of my own to figure out space and resources for rest. I reached out to Heidi and we had an incredible conversation about the Miller Fellowship, which she'll talk a little bit about shortly. But it was in that conversation that we dug a little bit deeper and explored what eventually became the opportunity alongside NEW, alongside M&A, alongside Co.act and CDAD to have conversations with folks like you, Kim, who, and obviously folks like us who are doing incredible work in the nonprofit sector to say, what would it look like to develop a sabbatical program for BIPOC leaders in the sector? And in doing so, what we also recognized is that organizations under a certain budget size would probably never have the resources, the infrastructure, the investment to be able to innovate from a policy standpoint around their PTO and time off. So how can we create something specifically for them? And that was the seedlings of it. And Shanae, like I said, I'm going to pick on you in a little bit, but what ultimately came to be, and I'm happy to share this with any of the listeners, is a culminating report that one tells the stories of burnout in the sector, specifically for BIPOC-led nonprofit organizations, and now an opportunity to do something about it. So what the design essentially is, and this is again testament and credit to Heidi and those at the Foundation McGregor, the fund, McGregor, we looked at sort of the design of the Miller Fellowship and said, what can we do similar in terms of design for the RLI initiative? So we most certainly want to have resources available for nonprofit leaders, and we're looking anywhere in the range of $30,000 to $50,000 that leader can have, again, similar in the design of Miller, to be able to utilize for themselves and design what rest looks like. The other thing that we thought was really important, considering the fact that, again, most of the organizations that we're hoping to impact are smaller in size and lack, again, tangible investment to be able to design sort of a program like this and or have opportunities for rest for their leader, is create resources that can go towards general operating for that particular organization and cultivate a community of care so that the nonprofit leaders that participate in the sabbatical can join together, can commensurate on their experiences, but most certainly help us to iterate on the program and its design. But Shanae, I know that you spent some time doing some research. So if you can just share briefly things that you learned, especially just from a national landscape, and why this is so critical.
Yes, Shamil, I definitely agree. I feel like with the beautiful part of this work was that it was collaborative, like being able to join in and be able to kind of really support in this way has been so impactful because there's so much lessons and learnings that we're all bringing to the table. But looking at a national lens and a scan of various sabbatical programs that are out there, like Shamil mentioned, we just recognized there weren't always so many accessible opportunities for people. For example, if your organization was making over $500,000, we've noticed there was a difference between those organizations that were typically awarded compared to smaller organizations. And then it gets even smaller when you look at Black and Brown or BIPOC nonprofit leaders. So being able to really hone in on our own specific community and pull what will make this program something that could be accessible and something that can actually be something that isn't more of a burden than a blessing, because we learned from our community that having the space to be able to actually break away is very challenging, especially if you have to take it in like a 3-month or 90-day increment. Being able to have the flexibility to space that time out was huge. And that was things that we've heard throughout like our focus group sessions and like through the surveys and the ways we've collected feedback. Being able to actually have resources dedicated to the organization for capacity building, also very big, because when we think of sabbatical programs, typically you'll see like a great chunk that goes to the nonprofit leader, which is deserved, but that organizational support, like being able to also have the space for your team to kind of step up as well and keep things moving, as well as also having space for their own rejuvenation was important. So I feel like within this report, it's been really exciting to be able to, one, really dream. And I think, Heidi, that was one of the words that you used when you gave us like the charge to really dream what this could be, like without the limits, without thinking of the ceiling at the top, to just dream big and to actually place this in a reality of the fact that knowing that it can happen, there's a possibility, there's space for it to happen, and being able to just do this alongside our collective peers in this space has been amazing, because we know the challenges that we're up against and we know what our community needs. And after hearing it through the focus groups, it just continues to show that this is so needed. So I'm really excited because of the years, like in terms of the feedback and the engagement, but actually able to see a report that is proposing something in recommendations and even practices for well-being, like Shamil, you mentioned, being able to cultivate spaces of care, communities of care outside of just a sabbatical program alone is key, because we know one program, while it can make a big difference, is not going to change the face of the sector. There's going to be a lot of other cultural work and change that needs to take place. So I'm really excited and grateful for that. So I guess maybe kind of on that note too, and please, I know Kim, you also were a participant in the fellowship, so please feel free to jump in at any time. But I'm curious, like Heidi, like just hearing more about, one, the importance of like sabbatical programs, and then just two, the bigger importance also of the Rest and Liberation Initiative.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna try to not take up too much time because it's my favorite subject. So the sabbatical program at the McGregor Fund, it's the Miller Eugene Fellowship Program. It started in 2009. I'm just going to name that it was, like much of philanthropy and the social sector, I think its original program design came from compassionate but corporate thinking. Okay. So, we have had to tweak the design over the years because our grantee pool, the fellowship is made available to grantees that we have a funding relationship with. It allows their CEO or executive director to be paid to take time out of the office and also to invest in the team that is stepping up to lead the organization in the leader's absence. So it's a pretty one-dimensional, simple, but powerful program. We've had to evolve that program over the years because our grantee pool is evolving, and we're learning from Kim, and we're learning from Shamil, we're learning from Charnay, and we're learning from our grantees. And so after we paused the program for a couple years during the pandemic because historically a lot of our fellows wanted to travel. And when travel kind of locked up for a bit, we just decided to pause. We came out of the pandemic. We had really broadened the number of new emerging BIPOC-led grantees, like became a much bigger part of our grant making. And so we knew that we had to rethink some of the tenets of the original construction of that program to make it work for a more diverse set of organizations at different life stages with different budget sizes. So I would say that originally the program was about, what kind of professional development do you want to do if you had the time? How can you go and connect with leaders across the country so you can come back and make your organizations bigger and better? And look, that's still a great impulse. And for executive directors that want to do some of that in their sabbatical, that's fine. But what we did when we reopened the program, and this is very much rooted in what we're learning from Rest and Liberation and all the work that you guys did together, we opened up the various uses of the sabbatical to include and embrace rest, to back away from the idea that, yeah, we're going to give you money for a sabbatical, but you have to perform during the sabbatical. We really pulled that back. And in fact, I would just say thank you to Kim. She's a part of a 9-member current cohort of current Miller Fellows. This cohort decided that they wanted to connect with each other. And so we've taken some small steps to make sure that they can connect with each other and support each other through their sabbatical experiences. And within that cohort of 9, we do have more traditional, like, I want to travel, I want to be inspired, I want to go connect with people doing similar work and learn from them. We also have, I just want to spend time with my kids, or I just want to spend time with my parents, or I just want to be by myself and retreat to reconnect with myself and get to that place of wellness and self-awareness to make sure my needs are met. It runs the whole gamut. So the way I would describe where we are now is in a state of learning and receptivity. We're learning from Kim. We're learning from Shamil. We're learning from Rest and Liberation. I see us always having a sabbatical program that's made available to the leaders of our grantee organizations, because we've seen how transformational that can be. And we know it's not enough, right? And what a strategy for wellness that's sector-wide should not come from philanthropy. Philanthropy should be supporting it, showing up for it, but it shouldn't be birthed in philanthropy. So it's just been such a great joy to both learn from the Miller Fellows, evolve that program as is necessary to be so truly supportive to our current grantees, but at the same time to say, look, we need more of this. And we want to show up in the communities and in the spaces where solutions like Rest and Liberation are being born. And we want to be a part of that too, because it is a cultural sea change that's required in the social sector. And we know that this is the path to peace. This is the path to justice. It's not a nice to have. It's the path.
I'll pop in and say, it has been an unbelievable experience to be on this sabbatical. I had people from all over the country who are saying, who did this? The McGregor Fund. So they are trying to learn and then take it back to their companies or their funders to say, do you see what she's doing? Like, you all need to learn from them. I remember when Heidi called me and she was like, I just want to tell you, I had to pull over to the side of the road and I just started crying. And I was just crying and I was just crying. I'm trying not to cry now. But it was because I had just remembered, I said, my children have graduated from high school, college, law school, and the entire time I was on my laptop. Like literally driving to graduation, and my husband in the car, and we're going, and I'm on my laptop trying to get something in, and never be able to really be in the moment, moving them into the dorm, going to Walmart, and then going back to the room because I have to get some work done. Even though I was off, never really taking that time off. And I said, my last total free vacation was 2012. That's ridiculous. And the flexibility of the fellowship just spoke to the McGregor Fund and the culture that you all are inviting and saying this is how we want this sabbatical to be, and this is what the type of funder that we want to be, because it was flexible. If you need to change the dates, you can do that, or think about what you want to do. And for me, I've always wanted to travel abroad, so I've encouraged everyone to do that. My children, all the young people who I serve, they've been everywhere, and I said, I've been to Belle Isle. Not literally that, but this is my time to do something that I want to do, and then to be able to step away is very, very impactful for my team to see who steps up, how they step up, the opportunities to be connected to folks who had already taken the sabbatical and to hear from them and how it went and what went wrong. It really left me, I won't cuss on this podcast, but they were like, listen, things will happen. Let it go. Like, things will happen and it is okay, Kim. So be prepared. It will happen. But to know that that's validated by someone else. And just to be able to connect to other folks too, who I've become people are dear to my heart now through this fellowship. And I have connected individually with the folks who are on the fellowship just to, hey, how's this going? Or did this work for you? Or this is what I'm trying to do. I'm getting ready to take part 2 in another 2 months. And I cannot wait. For me, it is really powerful to have an opportunity to do 2 months and then have a break and do another 2 months, because it gives me an opportunity to come back and say, this is what I need to fix. This is what I need to put in place. This is who can be elevated, and really put those things into play and then get ready to do it again. Because I almost feel like I'm perfecting this succession plan. Not that I'm trying to leave now, but that I put things in place so that I really can take a vacation now. I will be able to leave and not feel like it will fall apart. And not just myself, but setting up a system where everyone will be able to leave and feel like that they can go away and it's going to be okay. So that is just really powerful for our organization, and having that to be able to encourage folks to leave. So our theme is right now is like, just do your job. If you just do your job, everything will be all right, and you will be fine to leave and rest and do everything that you need to do and you want to do.
That's incredible, Kim. And I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
And it's just reflective that, having invested space to rest is not only a gift, but it becomes a culture shift in our organizations. And to me, that's sort of the spirit behind the Rest and Liberation Initiative. Yes, developing a sabbatical program is transactional in nature, and a sabbatical is a moment in time, whether it's 2 months, 4 months, or 18 months. But to me, what the infrastructure of that creates is radical transformation within our organizations to say that, A, rest is something that is, that we all deserve, but most importantly, what are the undercurrent or underlying reasons that cause burnout in the first place? And what are we doing about it? And how can we have conversations candidly with our funders? This podcast to me is like amazing. Why? Because it's an opportunity that probably wouldn't have existed years ago, where you and I can sit here with Heidi, our funder, and say, we're tired. We are burnt out. We are exhausted to the point that we actually may leave the work that we love because it's too much. We have spent, like you said, and I am no different, spent most of our time at home behind laptops, behind phones, trying to do the thing so that we can get back to the thing and missing all of the important time with our families. So I think there's something really special inside of a sabbatical infrastructure, which lends itself to disrupt this culture of burnout and be able to bring more folks into the conversation so that we can do something differently and also get to the root causes of it.
This conversation is transparent, vulnerable, and honest. And finding the root causes starts with honesty. And the work all of our guests are doing to bring light to the issue of burnout and the need for rest. We asked our guests to share some final thoughts on how can the greater community as a whole start to recognize wellness, rest, and liberation, not as just a moment, but truly as a movement.
I would just like to say, as somebody who has the privilege of sitting in the funder community, funders have got to acknowledge and own the role they play in burnout and exhaustion. It's harmful and it's not necessary. We are extractive and we have to stop. And I am not putting that burden on the folks in this podcast, although I understand you are all doing your part to deliver the truth and to dismantle the systems that are not supportive of your work in your communities. And I thank you and I honor you for that. But as a person in the funding community, me and my colleagues at the McGregor Fund take it as our personal responsibility in support of your leadership, in support of the culture change that needs to happen, to basically say to our colleagues, stop it. You collect too information. You don't know what the metrics are. Trust your grantee partners. Stop doing program restricted grants. Give people general operating. Do it multiple years. Make the report a conversation. It doesn't have to be a bunch of data. Stop telling your grantees how to measure their success. You don't have the answers. Trust the people that do. Get out of their way and support their success. That is the kinds of messages that me and my colleagues at McGregor Fund will continue to deliver so that we can create an environment where funders are not so extractive and harmful, and where you all do have the spaciousness to lead authentically, because that's what's going to lead to the kind of success and peace and justice that we're all here for.
Mic drop for that one. I don't know what else there is to say. It's because we all could be doing this work, and I say this often, in corporate America. We all have the skill set to do it, but we choose to be here. We choose to be in Detroit. We want to give back to our community, but we shouldn't do that at the risk of putting our health and our well-being and our families to the side. And it's so hard, but my focus as I have raised my children in doing this work has been, I can't lose my own trying to save someone else's, but that has made me exhausted too. And how do we make sure that we are being able to care for all the folks who we're serving through our work, but also care for ourselves and our families at the same time? It can't be a compromise.
I guess I'll close out by just focusing on what I can do, because Heidi, I appreciate the sentiment around funder responsibility, but I think I want to just touch a little bit on the responsibilities of leaders. And again, this is leaders without titles that work in nonprofit organizations. So Shanae, most certainly you are part of that leadership circle. I think we bear an individual responsibility to show up in a particular way that mirrors the change that we want to see in the sector. And it's one thing to talk about it, but if our actions, attitudes, and behaviors are not reflective of the change that we want to see, especially if we hold leadership positions within our respective organizations, it's hard to shift that culture internally. So I think for me, it's honoring myself first and recognizing that there are things that I need to do for my own wellness, my own wholeness, that are more important. And I'll say that in this setting, more important than the organization. And I have to mean that and actually honor that. I think collectively, if we have more conversations like this, and each one of us invite another person, another colleague to this sort of trusted circle, it will continue to reverberate. And I'm really excited that the momentum is building, one within, again, the structure of a sabbatical program. But again, to be able to make critical and tangible changes, we need to bring in more leaders, more thought partners, so that we can figure out other ways that we can subside burnout within nonprofit organizations and support the organizations holistically to be able to accomplish their missions.
Thank you all. That was so beautiful. I'm leaving it right there. That was just so powerful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you to all of our guests. Kim Johnson, founder, president, and CEO at Developing Kids. Find out more at developingkids.org. Heidi Alcock, Director of Grant Development and Communications at the McGregor Fund. Learn more at mcgregorfund.org. Shamil Dobbs, Chief Executive Officer at Michigan Community Resources. Find out more at mi-community.org. And myself, Shanae Sanders, Program Manager at Co.act Detroit.